Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to everyone around the world. I am Paul Sisler, and this is In the Moment. Today, we will finish up Rene Descartes' First Philosophy. Reason why we're bringing an end to Rene Descartes is remember the show is becoming Stoic. And one of the things that I want to illustrate is that not all philosophers were Stoics. And though they may bring great questions to the table, we have to ask ourselves again, what is Stoicism? And when you look at some of the greats like Pythagorean, and you look at Marcus Aurelius, and you delve into their virtues on how they perceive life, that is what we're looking for. That is what Stoicism is. To be able to go through life, hold into your emotions, live by a virtue of goodness, and move on with your day. Not let the little things bring you down. So, I'm going to conclude with Rene Descartes today. And I know Elizabeth Masters, she had an issue at work. She may be in. She can get that handled. We'll see. I'm going to go to meditation 3. And meditation 3 is of God that he exists. And I'm not going to read through all of the third meditation, but I'm going to bring up some points here. I'm going to go to the third section of meditation 3. Nevertheless, I before received and admitted many things as wholly certain and manifest, which yet I afterward found to be doubtful. What then were those? They were the earth, the sky, the stars, and all the other objects which I was in the habit of perceiving by the senses. But what was it that I clearly and distinctly perceived in them? Nothing more than the ideas and the thoughts of those objects were presented to my mind. And even now I do not deny that these ideas were found in my mind. But there was yet another thing which I affirmed, and which, from having been accustomed to believe it, I thought I clearly perceived, although in truth I did not perceive it at all. I mean, the existence of objects external to me, from which those ideas proceeded, and to which they had a perfect resemblance. And it was here I had, and it was here I was mistaken. Or if I judged correctly, this assuredly was not to be traced to any knowledge I possessed. Now, Rene Descartes has the inability to leave this aspect of God. Um, where do my thoughts come from? The things that I see before me that I perceive as being real, as fact, as truth, versus what comes to me in my mind. What comes to me and where does it come from? Who am I? What am I? And this is kind of what he is trying to associate, because you got to remember Rene Descartes was a mathematician. So let me take to number 4, which will help explain number 3 a little bit better. But when I considered any matter in arithmetic and geometry, that was very simple and easy, as for example, that 2 and 3 added together make 5. And things of this sort, did I not view them with at least sufficient clearness to warrant me in affirming their truth? Indeed, if I afterward had judged that we ought to doubt of these things, it was for no other reason than because it occurred to me that a God might perhaps have given me such a nature as that I should be deceived, even respecting the matters that appeared to me the most evidently true. But as often as this preconceived opinion of the sovereign power of a God presents itself to my mind, I am constrained to admit that it is easy for him, if he wishes it, to cause me to err, even in matters where I think I possess the highest evidence. And on the other hand, as often as I direct my attention to things which I think I apprehend with great clearness, I am so persuaded of their truth that I naturally break out into expressions such as these: deceive me who may, No one will yet ever be able to bring it about that I am not, so long as I shall be conscious that I am. Regardless of whether a creator has given me these imaginary thoughts, making me perceive things that do not exist, that I know aren't real because I can't pick them up, I can't touch them, I can't feel them, I can't smell them, I can't hear them. The creator then would be the one that would deceive me. So again, instead of ironing out what he as a human being would think without the perception of a God in the background directing his thoughts or allowing him to be deceived in any way, shape, or form, he's taking on this aspect of, all right, I can believe that 2 + 3 is 5. And if that's not true, then the only reason why it wouldn't be true is that a God or a deity would be making me think otherwise. So he's putting into his own conclusions that any error on his part is going to be that of a deity. But now he has to question, why would that deity bring that deception? Well, then it would have to be the devil, or because a good God wouldn't do that. So as you go on with Rene Descartes, he continues on with this deception aspect. And in truth, as I have no ground for believing that a deity is deceitful, and as indeed I have not even considered the reasons by which the existence of a deity of any kind is established, the ground of doubt that rests only on the supposition is very slight, and, so to speak, metaphysical. But that I may be able wholly to remove it, I must inquire whether there is a God. As soon as an opportunity of doing so shall present itself, and if I find that there is a God, I must examine likewise whether he can be a deceiver. For without the knowledge of these two truths, I do not see that I can ever be certain of anything. He's putting God in the check place of, if I can't prove or disprove whether there is a God, how can I be even sure of anything at all? So he's equivalating that for him to actually be, there has to be a superiorness. There has to be something beyond him. He, in this day, time, and era, could not actually conceive that there was something, that there may not actually be anything out there. His belief is there has to be a God. When you go through some of these other aspects of the meditation, let's see, what do I have highlighted here? Number 9, but I must consider whether these reasons are sufficiently strong and convincing. When I speak of being taught by nature in this matter, I understand by the word nature only a certain spontaneous impetus that impels me to believe in a resemblance between ideas and their objects, and not a natural light that affords a knowledge of its truth. By these two things are widely different. But these two things are widely different. For that the natural light shows to be true can be in no degree doubtful, as, for example, that I am because I doubt, and other truths of the like kind, inasmuch as I possess no other faculty whereby to distinguish truth from error, which can teach me the falsity of what the natural light declares to be true, and which is equally trustworthy. But with respect to natural impulses, I have observed, when the question related to the choice of right or wrong in action, that they frequently led me to take the worst path, nor do I see that I have any better ground for allowing them in what relates to truth and error. Again, putting this back into a religious aspect, because his thinking is that even though things by nature can be deceitful in their own attributes of what you may recognizes one thing where somebody else may recognize it as another based upon your perspective of it. That is the light, the deception of the mind playing a part. And where do I go from there? I have to bring it back to a God. A God is allowing me this. Number 10, then with respect to the other reason, which is that because these ideas do not depend on my will, they must arise from objects existing without me. I do not find it more convincing than the former, for just as those natural impulses, of which I have lately spoken, are found in me, notwithstanding that they are not always in harmony with my will. So these thoughts that you get versus what exists in the world and how you interact with them. Again, he's bringing into question things that when we sit there, we know the difference between our dreams and we know what we have to do in reality. We know that we have to put gas in a car to make it go, or, well, charge the electric car to make it go. It just doesn't work on its own. There are things that have to be done. Water, you can go to the lake, you can drink water, but you could get sick from it. But the water from the tap, why doesn't that make me sick? It's still water, but the reality is that we have processes, we have things that we do. So the deceit isn't of one water is a bad water and one water is a good water. The reality is that there's things that we can't see, like bacteria and viruses and things like that have an effect. So in this day and age, we have processes and we've become accustomed to them. You don't go out and drink water out of the lake. You drink your water out of your tap. And there's even people like myself who filter water to get other things out of the water that we don't want in our bodies. So today we look at things differently than what they did back in Descartes' time. And part of the upbringing in this day and era was very strong with religion and the belief in a God. So his inability to separate himself from that is where the problem lies. When you go further into his meditations, you go into meditation 4 of truth and error. And this whole section basically is him going back and forth with him, comparing God and the ability to be deceived. He constantly brings it back that if the things that he cannot perceive to be actual would be an act of deception, it would have to be the act of a deceptive deity. Whereas only a good deity will let him see the good things. So you have to really take a look at what perception he comes from in describing his thought process. The first part of truth and error. I have been habituated these bygone days to detach my mind from the senses, and I have accurately observed that there is exceedingly little which is known with certainty respecting corporeal objects, that we know much more of the human mind and still more of God himself. I am thus able now to, without difficulty, to abstract my mind from the contemplation of imaginary objects and apply it to those which, as disengaged from all matter, are purely intelligible. The mind and the body are two separate things. And this is what he is going through in Truth and Error. And again, he brings God back into it and still more of God himself. Any certainty, the idea I have of the human mind is so far as it is thinking, as it is a thinking thing and not extended in length, breadth, and depth, and participating in none of the properties of body. It is comparably more distinct than the idea of any corporeal object. That's the separation. The mind, in his eyes, is not part of the body. It's a complete separate thing. And it's a manifestation with the likeness of God. And in some strange sense, just from how he talks about things, he provides that he has a connection with this God, and that makes him greater than that of the body. So, with that, he now goes back into the questioning of his own thoughts, what is real and what isn't. And in some aspect, I believe he starts to question whether, even in his thoughts, that maybe in his dream world, which is going to be a closer connection to God, that there might actually be a reality to this thought process. But then the physical world, you're going back into the geometry and the mathematics of 2 plus 3 equals 5. These are the things that I can reasonably see, touch, taste, feel, and I know these things to be true. So now you're still into the questioning of the mind and the questioning of God. I'm trying to see if there was anything else in 3 that really resonated with me. Part 7, it further occurs to me that we must not consider only one creature apart from the others. If we wish to determine the perfection of the works of deity, but generally all his creatures together, for the same object that might perhaps, with some show of reason, be deemed highly imperfect if it were alone in the world, may for all that be most perfect possible, considered as forming part of the whole universe. And although, as it was my purpose to doubt of everything, I only as yet know with certainty my own existence and that of God. And again, without ever seeing, talking to, meeting God, because I think, therefore I am, therefore I doubt. I can't see me, the mind. I don't see that, but yet I think, therefore I am. So equally, God thinks, therefore he is. That's the justification of God existing. Let's see. I really don't find too much more to go on. Well, I guess 17, the end of this meditation. And since it is in being superior to error that the highest and chief perfection of man consists, I deem that I have not gained little by this day's meditation in having discovered the source of error and falsity. And certainly this can be no other than what I have now explained. For as often as I so restrain my will within the limits of my knowledge, that it forms no judgment except regarding objects which are clearly and distinctly represented to it by the understanding, I can never be deceived, because every clear and distinct conception is doubtless something, and as such cannot owe its origin to nothing, but must of necessity have God for its author. God, I say, who is supremely perfect, cannot without a contradiction be the cause of any error, and consequently it is necessary to conclude that every such conception or judgment is true. Nor have I merely learned today what I must avoid to escape error, but also what I must do to arrive at the knowledge of truth. For I will assuredly reach truth if I only fix my attention sufficiently on all of the things I conceive perfectly, and separate these from others which I conceive more confusedly and obscurely, to which for the future I shall give diligent heed. So, if something is not of perfection, Again, back to mathematics. Remember, Descartes is a mathematician. So 2 plus 3 equals 5. Anything that tries to say 2 plus 3 is lower or higher is deception. It's not of God. It's not perfect. The glass I drink from, it still holds water. So it is perfect. It is of God. We're able to create this glass because God allows us the knowledge to do so, because we are perfect. Anything else is not that of God. It's the devil deceiving us. So Rene Descartes, in being unable to separate God from his philosophies, and in his attempt, remember, his attempt is to eliminate everything, to doubt everything, to find the truth. And the one thing that he was unable to do in finding his truth was to eliminate God from the equation. Well, if your journey is to explore and find what is real and what isn't real, and you've eliminated everything else and you question everything else, but you still have God up here in the corner as part of that equation, then you haven't eliminated everything, because you've left God in the equation. So if you're truly to examine everything as a doubt to see what is real and what is not, you must also examine your God. But again, that's my perception of it. Meditation 5, of the essence of material things, and again of God, that he exists. Several other questions remain for consideration respecting the attributes of God and my own nature or mind. I will, however, on some other occasion perhaps, resume the investigation of these. Meanwhile, as I have discovered what must be done and what avoided to arrive at the knowledge of truth, what I have chiefly to do is to essay to emerge from the state of doubt in which I have for some time been, and to discover whether anything can be known with certainty regarding material objects. In other words, we're just going to put the mind and God and all of this stuff off to the side and come back to the materialistic things. What are these? And then we'll address God later. Because again, when you're going to have a conversation with somebody and you want to talk about the reality of, again, am I awake or am I dreaming? Well, hey, I have my coffee. I taste it. I love that. I can taste it. I can smell it. I know it's real. Yep. It's real. It's real. How can you have an argument with somebody saying that it's not real, that you're dreaming? No, I'm awake. No, I'm awake. I'm dreaming. All right. This is where a lot of people get fed up with Descartes, because Descartes goes into these back and forths, a lot of times contradicting himself because of, again, his belief in God. And he creates circular and divisionary arguments. And in doing so, he doesn't propose true solid evidence other than when he talks about the material things. Let's see. Is there anything in here that I have highlighted that could be... Hold on, let me see. Nor is it a valid objection to allege that perhaps this idea of a triangle came into my mind by the medium of the senses, through my having seen bodies of a triangular figure, for I am able to form in thoughts an innumerable variety of figures with regard to which it cannot be supposed that they were ever objects of sense, and I can nevertheless demonstrate diverse properties of their nature, no less than of the triangle, all of which are assuredly true, since I clearly conceive them. and they are therefore something, and do not and not mere negations. For it is highly evident that all that is true is something. So, anything that you can imagine, anything that you can create in your mind, if it exists, it's true. And, well, if it doesn't, it doesn't. Until you get to God. Let's see. All right. Now, this is where, in his going back and forth, that the idea that anything that you can conceive is an actuality. And this is the conclusion that he arrives to, is that anything that I can think of has to be in existence. I may not see it here and now, but if I can conceive it, it's because it exists. And this is where he turns that argument. Again, you'll note the contradictions in his works. And then when you get to this aspect, but the cases are not analogous, and a fallacy lurks under the semblance of this objection. For because I cannot conceive a mountain without a valley, it does not follow that there is any mountain or valley in existence, but simply that the mountain or valley, whether they do or do not exist, are inseparable from each other. Whereas, on the other hand, because I cannot conceive God unless as existing, it follows that existence is inseparable from him, and therefore that he really exists. Not that this is brought about by my thought, or that it imposes any necessity on things, but on the contrary, the necessity which lies in the thing itself, that is, the necessity of the existence of God, determines me to think in this way. For it is not in my power to conceive a God without existence, that is, a being supremely perfect, and yet devoid of an absolute perfection, as I am free to imagine a horse with or without wings. Nor must it be alleged here as an objection that it is in truth necessary to admit that God exists after having supposed him to possess all perfections, since existence is one of them. Then he goes into his original opposition, and again, back and forth. So, in the end, anything that you can conceive, though it may not exist here, it has existed, it does exist, or will exist, because you can conceive it. Let's see. I think that about ends that on the 5th. Meditation 6, of the existence of material things and the real distinctions between the mind and body of man. See if I have anything in here highlighted that we can incorporate into this. Nor was I altogether wrong in likewise believing that my body, which by a special right I called my own, pertained to me more properly and strictly than any of the others. For in truth, I can never be separated from it as from other bodies. I felt in it, and on account of it, all of my appetites and affection, and in fine, I was affected in its parts by pain and the titillation of pleasure, and not in the parts of the other bodies that were separated from it. But when I inquired into the reason why, from this I now know not what sensation of pain, sadness of mind should follow, and why from the sensation of pleasure joy should arise, or why this indescribable twitching of the stomach, which I call hunger, should put me in mind of taking food, and the parchedness of the throat of drink. And so in other cases I was unable to give any explanation, unless that I was so taught by nature, for there is assuredly no affinity, at least none that I am able to comprehend. Make with it what you will. Let's see. Okay. And firstly, because I know that all which I clearly and distinctly conceive can be produced by God exactly as I conceive it, it is sufficient that I am able clearly and distinctly to conceive one thing apart from another, in order to be certain that the one is different from the other, seeing they may at least be made to exist separately by the omnipotence of God. And it matters not by what power the separation is made, in order to be compelled to judge them different, and therefore merely because I know with certitude that I exist, and because in the meantime I do not observe that aught necessarily belongs to my nature, or essence beyond my being, a thinking thing. Now it's a Though I might see the horse with wings in my imagination, it's not that the horse with wings actually exists, but because I know that wings actually exist and that a horse actually exists, I can now put the two together and imagine what a horse with wings would look like. Whereas if that's something that would be necessary for us on this plane, God would have created that. But I can imagine it. Um, oh, okay. That basically concludes the meditation of the first philosophy, Rene Descartes. I encourage you to read Descartes. The reason why reading Descartes is necessary is that Descartes requires critical thinking skills. As far as how you would use the ideologies of Descartes in everyday life, critical thinking skills. You watch MSNBC, you watch Fox News, and you watch what these different politicians say. You watch what your friends, what your family talk about, what they say. If your critical thinking skills are weak, you can easily be deceived. You can easily be made to believe something that is not. Critical thinking involves the ability to utilize logic, deductive reasoning, and the common sense that we all are supposed to have. And common sense is, we observe that the sun rises in the east, it sets in the west. And common sense dictates, along with deductive reasoning and logic, that when I wake up in the morning and I'm going to go outside to watch the sunrise, that I'm going to face east to see that. Now, until that doesn't happen, that's going to be a reality. I know that exists because I watch it every morning. So when you start looking at people in life and the discussions that you have with them, there's certain things that you can pick up on that are embellishments. The source of it may be truth, but I drank 100 gallons of water today. An intentional embellishment. I'm saying that I drank a lot of water today. I don't expect anybody to believe that I drank 100 gallons of water today. But the embellishment is there for purpose of I drank a lot of water. The logical person that has critical thinking skills is not going to think that I'm a liar because I said I drank 100 gallons of water. They're going to be able to pick up that that's an embellishment with intent to show that I drank a lot of water today. A person with lower critical thinking skills might think of me as a liar because there's no way to drink 100 gallons of water. You didn't drink 100 gallons of water, Paul. Why would you lie to me? They're going to miss the embellishment. You get what I'm saying? As you read Rene Descartes, you are forced to look upon what he says, how he says it, what he is comparing, and why there are contradictions. And you can see his own self-embellishments to try to justify things. So I encourage the readings of Rene Descartes to improve upon your own critical thinking skills as a person. That way, when you read someone like Marcus Aurelius, Plato, Socrates, the writings of the Pythagoreans or Pythagorean himself, when you go into some of these greats and you start to analyze what they're bringing to the table and why they view things in the way they do, it's going to make sense to you. Whereas if you're lacking in the critical thinking arena, you're only going to find confusion. You're only going to find confusion. Rene Descartes allows you to delve in. Now, granted, if you are already lacking in critical thinking skills, Rene Descartes is not a good place to start because you're going to be lost. Maybe go back to something much simpler, like maybe a philosophy 101 class, to bring something up in you that you may not have looked at in a group setting of philosophical argument and debate. Would absolutely do some good for you. Any kind of a critical thinking philosophy, absolutely get into that. Critical thinking is important in everyday life. And without these great philosophers, these great examiners of the mind and the thought process, the examiners of human culture, human existence, why we do the things that we do, why we look at things the way we look at them. It can open your eyes to many avenues that you may not be accustomed to. So I highly encourage getting into the philosophies. If you find yourself as someone that is angry all the time, if you're finding yourself as someone that is depressed all the time, obviously you may want to seek, professional help. But if it's something that you believe is manageable, I encourage grab out some of the great philosophers and pick up what they are talking about and how they help you delve within your inner self. Because part of the problem I think today that a lot of people are facing is that not enough people are looking into themselves. They're looking for other people to blame, to justify their own actions, to get through life, because life is difficult. I have found that a lot of the people that I have talked to, that when they delve into a philosophy, it helps them tremendously. Is it really a mistake that Descartes assumes a presumption of God? Either there is or is not a higher organizing power. Hold on a second. This is just one of two paths. Thomas Aquinas, Kirkland, Kierkegaard, and others do too. True, very true. But you also have to look back into their eras of what was presented as a mode of theology and what people were expected to take part in. Because you have to remember that in some of these eras, the religious freedoms that we have today We're not present in some lands of certain belief systems. So I'm not saying that it's a mistake that Descartes assumes a presumption of God. It's how it would be a mistake for me to presume there is a God in reading Descartes. Am I free to believe that there is a God or not a God? Yes. When I look at the writings of a lot of these other philosophers that they take on the aspect of God in some consumption form or another, it's not that their philosophies take a wrong path or a path of ignorance. It's a path of the unknown. I mean, even today, people will argue on whether or not there is or is not a God and what we believe in and why we believe in such a thing. Whether it's a spiritual aspect, which is, again, you have your Abrahamic religions, which, you have your, your Holy Bible, your Torah, your Quran. They're pretty much all subjectively the same. And I know there's going to be a lot of people. Well, no, they're very different. They're subjectively the same. They're Abrahamic religions, okay? And they break off into so many sects and different categories that that's one avenue you can go. You can go to Buddhism, Hinduism, Taoism, Taoism, Confucianism. And they're not so much religions as they're more of a philosophy of life versus a religion. All of these pathways that you look at are, if used properly, or is for making a better self. And if you're trying to truly, indeed, make a better self, that is great. The mistake that Descartes does is, if you're going to pose the argument of, I'm going to take away everything, I doubt everything, you must also doubt that very God you believe in. If you're going to doubt the glass that you hold in your hand, you must also doubt the God that you believe in for the argument. It's not wrong for him to assume there is a God, but for the sake of the argument that he tries to make, he also has to take that God out of the equation. He has to question his own God, which he does. He does do that. He does question, but he doesn't question the existence of the God. He questions the morality of the God. Stoics, for example, take a neutral position because they believe it's mostly irrelevant, but they do believe in nature as in a logical organizing principle, which I could claim as God. Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Your Stoics, your spiritualists, which they, for the most part, actually kind of run hand in hand in a lot of their ideological belief systems. Take my show on Wednesdays with Shadow Fox and her laws of spirit that she goes over and discusses run hand in hand with a lot of the belief systems of Stoicism. And quite frankly, Shadowbox is a reader of Marcus Aurelius, because a lot of the lessons that you take from these readings, especially the Stoics, because the Stoics have that virtue of living a good, clean, healthy life on a multitude of levels. And as you brought up here, they take a neutral position because it is irrelevant. It doesn't matter if there is or is not a God. If there is a God, then I will meet that God someday, And if there isn't a God, it doesn't matter. I still need to live my life, whether there is or is not a God. And that's why Stoics take a neutral aspect in relation to whether there is or is not a God. It's one of the reasons why Descartes is not a Stoic, because he can't take that neutral avenue. You can still have your belief, but you still have to have that neutralness that you're talking about, Bryce. You still have to have that. All right, yes, I believe there is a God, but in relation to what I'm going to do today and what I'm going to do tomorrow and how I'm going to treat everybody else around me has nothing to do with that God. Now, that God may want me, according to the writings of from these humans, treat people this way or treat other people that way. But do I find that within myself as being proper? I mean, why would I want to treat anybody badly? I mean, I personally, I don't. I mean, even people that I disagree with, I'm going to have a conversation with them. So the avenue that we have to look at, whether there is or is not a God, whether there is or is not anything that is out there, whether you believe that, there is a superiority of a certain class, religion, sex, gender, whatever the case may be, is all irrelevant, because you have to function in a world today. You have to tolerate the people in this world today. And if you're going to move forward, with self, then you have to accept everybody as they are and hope that they also eventually can accept themselves. Because when you really get down to it, Bryce, when you really get down to it and you look at a Stoic, the Stoic must first accept self. You must first love self. You must first know self. And if you don't love and know yourself, you have no right, no business to judge anyone else. All right, everyone. I apologize for the shortness of the show, but hey, I think I did pretty well truffling through the final aspects of Rene Descartes. I will get back with Elizabeth and find out who we're going to take upon or what avenue we're going to go, because we're going to take this show of Stoicism and bring it to its core probably in about 3 to 4 weeks, for what our objective is, because I want to get into the Stoics of today. Who are the real Stoics of today? Others like Nietzsche, etc., argue presuming God is a lie, opposite approach. I just see two approaches to solve a similar equation. Well, I, you know, I look at it this way, and it comes down to really, it doesn't matter if there is or isn't. Um, whether you presume one to be or one not to be, again, is irrelevant. If there is a God or gods or whatever that may be out there that has a process to think, I think, therefore I am, has the ability to create, has the ability to alter or change or manipulate or whatever the case is, I logically cannot conceive that there is a all-knowing, all-powerful creator of all things, all good being out there. Because if you're the creator of all things, logic would dictate you have created all things. You therefore can't be all good, because we have evil. So If you're the creator of all things, you created good and evil. So you can't be all good. And if you're all powerful, then why would you, if you're the creator of all things, let your creation suffer? Again, you're not all good. So that's where I am when it comes to religion. Does that mean that there isn't a God? No, no. There could be a God out there, just may not be all knowing or all powerful or all good. There may be multiple gods out there. I don't know. Quite frankly, I really don't care. I have a life to live here. And I believe that we as human beings should focus more on our life that we're living here and doing good for others, helping self, than going out there and trying to cause harm. And if part of the other excuse is there is no God, why would you do good? If the only reason you do good is because you fear a God and that you may go to hell if you don't do good, you are not a good person then. If fear is the only thing that is going to make you do good, you're not a good person. I refuse to live in fear. And I'm definitely not going to live in the fear of a God. So if there is a God that's out there and I'm supposed to fear that God, sorry, I don't. Strike me, do whatever it is you're going to do. I don't care, because I'm going to continue living my good life and being good and kind to others, helping people when I can, and making sure that I live the most virtuous, the most honest life that I can lead. So there we go. I don't mind reading about the other gods, but hey, sometimes it's quite fascinating. I prefer the Roman gods. There's so many of them and just so many delicacies within on their personalities, the egos, the arrogance, the dysfunction of the gods. I love the dysfunction of the gods. That humanizes them even more for me, which tells me where most of them were probably created. From the aspects of humanism. The argument is that the free will of men brought evil into existence. There is no choice of God slants the equation to make everything good. Well, again, if God is the creator of all things, then and he's all knowing, well, there is no free will. Then it's all strictly if God is all knowing, he knows all past, present, and future. There's no free will. We're just following a storyline in God's little play. So the fact that I thought I chose a blue shirt today, God already knew that. Well, then I made no choice. The blue shirt was already predetermined. And you can't bring something into existence if the creator of all things created all things. So we're not creators. We are just players on a script. There is no choice of God slants the equation to make everything good. Everything being good. If you had a world without evil and everybody was doing what was in the best interest of self and others, I would love to live in that world. Doesn't need to be hate or discontent or people putting people down because they're different or whatever. We would still have the free will to make choices of what color do I wear today? Where am I eating today? Let's go eat here or let's go eat there. What's wrong with having a life of joy and pleasure? Why does there have to be evil? I pose that argument. Why does there have to be evil? And don't give me, well, there has to be balance. We can have balance within good. Don't have to have evil to be the balanced aspect of the equation, So, answer that argument. Why does there have to be evil? So, Anyways, thank you, Bryce. I appreciate that. I would love to have you on here. I want to do the argument of free will versus determinism. And I think down the road, I think Elizabeth and I will bring that topic up because the argument of free will versus determinism is a very good topic to go into in relation to Stoicism. I think that Stoics truly believe that there is an aspect of both in play, where I think the philosopher is going to try to make an argument for strictly one side or the other. And again, there's another aspect of things that people want to put out there. It has to be one or it has to be the other. There is no in between, which is also a fallacy. That's even more scripted than the choice scenario I proposed, though. Okay. Yes. The argument of determinism versus free will is pretty scripted. That's why I like to delve into the hybrid. I like the hybrid aspect of everything. I love hybrids. So, anyways, Bryce, thank you for your last minute interjections to help me extend the show. I appreciate it. Remember, everyone, be kind, be happy, and may good things come your way. Thank you.